We don't understand how the cycle goes because it comes along about once a lifetime. But there are orders, there are systems, and the systems break down for certain reasons, and it creates cycles. For example, there's a monetary system, and then there's a debt cycle. And so as a result, you get to a point where you can't sustain that. You have a debt issue. We have a debt issue. But there's a monetary cycle. There's a internal political order cycle that takes us from one political order to another political order in which there's great turbulence between the left and the right. And because of disorder, particularly in democracies, there's a lot of fighting because there needs to be cooperation, compromise, and so on. And we're in the process of changing that order. In addition, we have the international world order. Began in 1945. You win a war, the dominant powers get to set the rules. Things like the United Nations, World Trade Organization, World this and World that. So there are these three orders related to too much debt. Debt is money. Second, internal order. How does our system work? Who's going to get control of this problem? And then number three, there's also throughout history, climate, acts of nature. Droughts, floods, and pandemics have killed more people and toppled more orders. And then there's, throughout history, man's inventiveness and new technologies, which is creating this transformative result. If we look at tariffs, tariffs represent a dealing with the imbalances. The imbalance means we have a tremendous capital imbalance and a tremendous trade imbalance, which is unsustainable. And so that's the backdrop of this. Related to that is also the international conflict. How do you have dependency, mutual dependency? How can the United States be a safe country and not manufacture things? How can China be safe in terms of having capital, an American capital? Those connections are breaking down. So that's the essence of the backdrop.
That's a great backdrop to understand the way you're thinking about it. Let's go straight to the tariffs, which is to say, how do you think, therefore, they play out? And from an economic perspective, as we're all watching the market today, so what happens?
Well, mechanistically, it raises costs. It lowers revenues for companies. I mean, what does it mean for a company? And capital is going to be harder to come by. And then we're trying to replace manufacturing. I mean, I agree with the problems, about the fact that we don't manufacture. There is a problem with that. But there's a structural problem of whether we can manufacture. We have a population that basically 3 million people, 1% of the population, is incredibly brilliant. I mean, they go to the best schools, they come out, they make the unicorns, inventiveness. At the same time, what we have is 10% of the population around them that's doing very well. 60% of the population has below a 6th grade reading level. It's tough to be productive. So when we agree with the problem, too much debt, we should get it down to 3%. We have to get the budget deficits down to 3% of GDP. We all agree on the problem. The question is, what do we do about it? How do you create that self-sufficiency? And so from a practical point of view, that manufacturing is very difficult under this sort of circumstances to create within the United States, yet it's needed.
So therefore you agree with the president, you disagree with the president? I'm trying to understand what the conclusion is here. If the president is watching you right now, if Scott Bessent is watching you right now, you're telling him what? This is a good idea? You're telling him abandon this idea? What are you saying?
I agree with the problem, okay? I am very concerned about the solution, okay? The practicality of the solution. In other words, I think that this is going to create not only the problem, the capital markets problem that I'm talking about related to prices going up, costs going up, prices, revenue going down, and capital problem. But I also think that this is going to create great sand in the gears of production worldwide. At the same time, I do agree that this interdependency, This issue of productivity in the world, in which we have to be competitive and productive, and we're not competitive in producing things, is a longer-term problem, not an easy one. And I do expect that it is going to have political consequences. This is the nature of the cycle. It is coming also at the same time as we have a budget issue. The budget issue, a comparably important issue. So as we look ahead in the months ahead, we have to get the budget deficit down to 3% of GDP. These are not easy problems to solve, I'm concerned, because the bigger problems exist. The debt exists. You can't get around the debt. The overspending exists. You still have that. You still have that competitiveness issue. These have repeated throughout history. We're in a period that's very much like the 1930s.